Hello friends, this video on environmental issues part 18 is brought to you by examfear.com. No more fear from exam. So with this we have discussed about the agrochemicals and we saw their harmful effects, so how they can impact us, and the solution to the harmful impacts of agrochemicals is organic farming. So now we are going to talk about the next environmental issue, that is radioactive wastes. So we have been talking about the term radioactive wastes quite some time, and in many a times we came across this word, but we never discussed it in detail. So here we will see what is so very harmful in radioactive wastes that even in very low concentration they can be that harmful. So let us see what are radioactive wastes. So these are the wastes which contain radioactive material. Now what do we mean by radioactive material? These are those materials which are capable of emitting a special type of radiation called radioactive radiation. Now this phenomenon is called radioactivity. So one of the most common example of radioactive metal or radioactive element is uranium. So uranium is the most common example, and it is used as the main fuel in the nuclear power plants because it is used to produce a lot of nuclear energy. So now I will not get into the detail of radioactivity, but these are the wastes which contain any of the radioactive material. Now, from where do we get such radioactive wastes? One of the major sources of radioactive waste is the nuclear power plant. The reason being, the main fuel used in the nuclear power plant is uranium, and uranium is radioactive in nature. So obviously the wastes coming out of this power plant will contain traces of uranium. So they are radioactive wastes. It can be hospitals where so many radiations and these kind of treatments go on, where again we use radioactive, these kind of radiations are being used. Industries where again we use different sort of fuels where we might be using such kind of radioactive material. So these are the main sources of radioactive wastes. So now there can be various categories of radioactive wastes. For example, they could be demolished materials from the nuclear industrial sites. Now, demolished materials like maybe plastics, bricks, metal valves, etc., and maybe some of them might contain some very small trace of such radioactive material. It could also be some other type of wastes which have a little higher level of radioactivity, for example, paper, tools, clothes, filters, which have small amount of short-lived radioactivity. So that could be another category of radioactive waste which has low level of radioactivity. So there could be different levels of radioactivity in the radioactive waste. Some might have very low level of radioactivity, some might have intermediate level of radioactivity. For example, the chemical sludges or the contaminated materials coming out of the reactors. So those kind of things might have a little more higher level of radioactivity. But if you have something like the used fuel, used uranium fuel itself, so this is going to have quite high level of radioactivity. So the levels of radioactivity might differ in different types of waste material. So it could be very low, the level could be very low, the level could also be low, the level could be intermediate, and the level could also be very high. So it depends upon what kind of waste has come out of that particular industry or factory. So that ways we can categorize the various types of or various categories of radioactive wastes. Now, generally the industrial waste, the waste coming out of the industries, they can also contain alpha, beta, gamma radiations. So those radiations can also be there. So that means all these wastes which we get out of all these industries, not necessary that all of them are going to be equally harmful. It depends upon how much, what is the level of radioactivity present in them. Now, in fact, from the hospitals also, we get it because of the so many radiations kind of therapy which is used, or so many diagnostic purposes. There are many radioisotopes which are used in the field of medicine. So we can get those traces of radioisotopes in the wastes coming out of hospitals. So let us quickly discuss the harmful effect of radioactive wastes. Why are we so much scared of radioactive wastes? Now, some of the harmful effects are even lower doses can cause serious problems like cancer. So even if a radioactive substance is present in a very low concentration, that itself can cause cancer. Now, what causes cancer? Basically, whenever cancer is mostly caused by mutations, whenever your genetic arrangement changes due to some sort of mutation in your DNA, that person is prone to cancer. So these kind of mutations can be caused by radioactive wastes. Now, one of the most harmful radioactive material is plutonium. So plutonium is a deadly radioactive material. So it is even more harmful than that of uranium. And the worst part is that these radioactive materials or these radioactive wastes, they remain harmful for thousands of years. That's because the phenomenon or the property of radioactivity is a long-term property. So if you look at the half-life or the average life of the radioactive metals, you will see that they have got really long half-lives. And half-life is the time period it takes for their radioactivity to reduce to half of its initial value. So when it is that long, so obviously their radioactivity effect remains, or it lasts for a very long period of time. So it is not only harmful for the present generation, but it remains harmful for many future generations. So high dose can even cause death. So when low dose can cause deadly disease like cancer, so obviously high dose is definitely going to cause death. It is a threat to future generation, the cause being they remain harmful for several thousand of years. They have got very high value of half-life. Now, looking at the harmful effects of radioactive wastes, it is very important to control these kind of waste. So what can we do from our end to reduce these effects of radioactive wastes on the environment? So the first thing is nuclear waste should be treated well before storage. So all the waste material which is coming out of a nuclear power plant, they should be very well treated before they are disposed of, or even if they need to be stored. Let us suppose any product coming out of the nuclear power plant that needs to be stored. So that storage also needs to be done in a proper place so that it doesn't transmit any sort of harmful radiations. So while treating the radioactive wastes, what should be done is the harmful substances should be transmuted into some harmless materials. The same concept should be followed during treatment. More toxic things being converted into less toxic things. Proper disposal after treatment. Now, once it is treated, okay, even though it is less toxic, but as you saw that even in low concentration, it can be extremely harmful. So the proper disposal is very important. Now, how do we dispose these kind of radioactive wastes? Now, there are several options, but still there are certain issues with the disposal in any of the options. For example, one option is it is disposed in oceans. So it is going to cause water pollution, because even in small concentration it is going to pollute the water. If it is disposed above ground storage, long-term above ground storage, in that case also it is not going to be foolproof. So there is some or the other issue with the disposal of radioactive wastes, and that is extremely important. So it is something like this, that we have set up nuclear power plants, and we know that as soon as we set up nuclear power plants, we are going to get a lot of radioactive wastes. But we do not have a proper way how we can dispose the radioactive wastes. So we have arrived at a situation where we have done something without having proper handling methods for its disposal. So that is not right. So therefore, it is extremely important that before further nuclear power plants are set up, it is important to find out a proper or a good option of disposal of radioactive wastes. And if we are not able to find an option to dispose radioactive wastes, it is better not to set up any further nuclear power plant, because the advantage which we will get out of nuclear power plant by creating nuclear energy, that will get compensated by the harm which will be caused to the environment by the radioactive wastes, and there is no point doing that. So no construction of nuclear power plant until the problem of handling radioactive wastes is handled. So this is very important. There should be no further construction of nuclear power plant. So these are some of the ways in which radioactive wastes can be handled, at least to control the contamination or the harm caused to the environment by the radioactive wastes. Thank you. Please visit www.examfear.com to watch more educational videos with a better experience. Please do not forget to like and subscribe to our YouTube channel for latest updates. Thank you once again.